Hey everyone, before we jump into today's episode, we just want to give a warning that today's episode contains discussions of sexual assault as well as more mature language than most of our past episodes. We want to continue to explore new authors, genres, and books, and we know that not every episode is going to be for you. If you have any book, author, or genre requests, drop them in the comments. Thanks for your support. Now let's get into the episode. Welcome, bookworms and plot twist fanatics, to Cliffhangers and Page Turners, episode 24. If you're into gripping book discussions and wild plot twists, definitely hit that subscribe button. We drop new episodes every Friday on all the usual podcast platforms. But remember, for the full library, you can only find our old episodes over on YouTube.
That's right. And today we're really getting into an incredibly rich and honestly, almost unsettlingly honest account from Hannah Pittard. If you love it, let it kill you.
It really feels like opening up someone's most secret diary. And you find so many moments that are, well, surprisingly relatable, others that are genuinely surprising, and sometimes, let's be honest, kind of cringeworthy. What jumped out at you immediately about Hannah Pittard's voice from these first pages? For me, it was definitely that restless energy, almost like a low buzz humming in the background of her thoughts.
I totally agree. And what's immediately striking isn't just that she says she's restless, but how it seems so depthly tied to this profound internal conflict right from the get-go. She's laying bare these, contradictory desires and observations, whether it's her deep-seated inability to just be still or her incredibly sharp, often pretty cynical view of the world and everyone in it. The insight here, I think, is that for some people, maybe the comfort and stability of routine actually feels like a kind of death. And that pushes them into this perpetual, often uncomfortable state of becoming, of needing change. It really sets the stage for a compelling exploration of what it even means to feel alive amidst all the mundane stuff of life.
Okay, so Hannah Pittard starts the book telling us she's feeling restless. It's a Sunday, her nephew's 6th birthday party. And what perfectly sets the mood is this really mundane lead-up with the mac and cheese incident. She'd spent hours the day before making 3 homemade kinds, right? Only for her nephew to announce just hours before dinner that he wouldn't touch any of them. It seems so small, so trivial, doesn't it? But there's such a heavy sigh behind it, like it's the perfect, almost darkly comic setup for something much bigger about to unravel inside her. She's in her bathroom, hers and Bruce's, the bald man she shares her bed with, watching her 80-year-old father park his little orange Mini and I across the street from her sister's house where the party is. And he parks it the wrong way, of course. It just grounds you so quickly in her slightly exasperated reality.
You're absolutely right. That mac and cheese story, while it seems small, is actually a masterful move by Pittard. It immediately grounds us in the everyday, But beneath that sort of domestic surface, the real catalyst hits a week before this. Her friend Jane calls. And Jane tells her that Hannah's ex-husband has written her into his debut novel. And the portrayal, smug and insecure.
Oof.
Yeah. Jane initially says, oh, he means to keep it a secret from the world, but then clarifies, with this delicious little sting, only from you. So this isn't just news. It's an external perception acting like a profoundly distorting mirror, It triggers this deep, almost involuntary introspection. The unread book, this judgment from the outside, becomes this powerful force shaping her sense of self, but through someone else's, bitter lens. It forces her to ask, well, how much of who I think I am is actually defined by what other people think, even if they're totally wrong?
And the irony, the dark humor of that situation. When she asks Jane how she's portrayed, and Jane says, smug, insecure. Hannah's immediate thought, which she doesn't even finish, is, if I were an angry and unsatisfied man, you know exactly where she's going with that. Right? It's that moment of seeing yourself through the eyes of someone you perceive as an enemy, and there's this weird, almost dark flash of recognition. And Jane's admission that he means to keep it secret, but only from you. It's so perfectly passive-aggressive.
Right.
And it just fuels this internal questioning. Who am I really, if this is how I'm seen? And who am I if I'm secretly doing things, or maybe just thinking things, that totally contradict that image? Because it feels like the universe is just sort of underlining all her existing internal conflicts.
It's the really unsettling truth about perception, isn't it? That someone else's twisted view can still get under your skin and stir up deep insecurities, even when you know it's just a caricature. But speaking of complex relationships and unconventional dynamics, let's talk about Bruce, her boyfriend-husband. He's this constant sort of grounding presence in the narrative. She describes him as the bald man she shares her bed with. He's a professor of English, an Americanist like her, teaches stuff like Beloved. He's only been part of her family for 5 years, which is interesting. And their dynamic is just so fascinatingly unconventional, almost defiant, especially considering her past marriage.
Boyfriend-husband is such a perfect term for it. He's been around 5 years, but they're not legally married. And their absolute peak of this married in our hearts thing happens during his colonoscopy check-in. Apparently this kindly young man at the check-in desk, maybe wearing mascara, she notes, was hesitant about her being the emergency contact since they weren't legally hitched. Things got a bit heated, and Bruce, who she describes as tall, broad-shouldered, originally from Decatur, Illinois, just declares loudly, "Sir, we are married in our hearts." Right. It's this absurd public declaration of their very private agreement. And she admits it's her fault they're not legally married. She made the conscious choice to keep it weird after her divorce. After her husband, who was still a colleague then, cheated on her with the woman, her supposed dear friend, who'd actually introduced them in the first place. And the advice to keep it weird actually came from a graduate student, believe it or not. Someone who hadn't kept it weird, being married with a daughter, but who seemed to have a really firm and honest grasp on her situation and the world's incongruities. This decision to keep it weird, it really says a lot about her post-divorce identity, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. That keep it weird philosophy is just central to her identity after the marriage ended. She explicitly says she didn't want to be married again, not to anyone, ever, and she hoped to kind of skirt the official role of stepmother, which is a title she admits she despised ever since her own father married a deeply sadistic architect when she was 10.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, it's a crucial detail, right? It hints at these deep-seated resentments and childhood traumas that are clearly shaping her adult choices now. Even though she lives with Bruce's daughter half of every week, makes these extravagant dinners for her, meticulously cuts out giant hand-stenciled letters for her birthday and the end of school. Despite all that, she hoped to somehow continue to exist merely as the eccentric childless girlfriend who happens to own 50% of a house with her father. It highlights this really profound internal conflict, like a desire for connection and domesticity. You see it in the shared house, even their shared quirks, like spying on neighbors with binoculars.
Oh, yeah, the binocular.
Right. She describes turning off all the downstairs lights, calling quietly up to her office attic to come down quick because the neighbors are doing something curious, then crouching next to her, skulking from window to window for a better view. But alongside that connection, there's this deep resistance to the conventional labels and the perceived limitations that come with those roles. And Bruce just tolerating, even encouraging her eccentricities like the spying, it really speaks volumes about their unique bond and maybe his own quiet acceptance of her quirks too.
The binoculars are such a fantastic detail. It perfectly shows their shared weirdness, their willingness to bend social rules together, create their own little world. We don't have time to obey the law. That's another one of their inside jokes. It goes back to her first boyfriend who ran a stop sign once. It speaks to this shared kind of playful rebellion, right? A sense of fun lawlessness. Bruce and her use it often, and he even asks her what it's from after she says it when they accidentally run a red light together. But under that playfulness, there's this real tension she talks about. She struggles with feeling domesticated. And even though she has Bruce, she expresses this desire for otherness, but without feeling actual lust. She texts Jane about this. She confesses her brain is lustful for otherness without feeling actual lust and honestly despising, even fearing the actuality of otherness. It's like this intellectual craving for something illicit, something exciting, but coupled with a genuine aversion to what it would actually mean in the real world. What do you make of that? What does it reveal about her core state?
That tension is absolutely palpable, yeah. And it really speaks to a fundamental disconnect between her intellectual desires and her emotional reality. It suggests her longing for otherness isn't really about physical transgression, maybe. It's more about escaping the perceived stagnation of her life, or maybe seeking a mental stimulation her current reality isn't providing. And this internal struggle extends really powerfully to her family, who are this constant, unsettling, and very, very present force in her life. Her mother, father, and sister, and their families, they all live in Kentucky now. A move she describes as a long story because she moved there first, years ago, with her ex, never planning to stay. But now he's gone, and her family is there, all within a mile radius.
A mile.
Yeah. And that proximity creates this intense, almost suffocating dynamic. It often leads her to think, with this sort of weary sigh, they have gone too far.
Oh, the family. There's such a central, chaotic force field in her life. Her mother's dramatic phone calls or something else. Have you fallen off a horse? Are you feeling sick? Have you gotten a diagnosis? Are you trapped in the attic again? Do you have intentions of climbing a tree while tied to a chainsaw?
Wow. Wow.
It's just this constant low hum of anxiety, a stream of frantic what-ifs. And her mother's relentless search for a soulmate through 3 different online boyfriends in different states, always wanting someone to get fancy for, even while she's drinking wine in sweatpants with Bruce and Hannah. Then there's her father, 80 years old, parking his orange MI&I the wrong way across from her sister's, having these loud speakerphone calls, pathologically undeterred by anything around him. And he calls every man she's ever lived with, including her ex-husband, her roommate.
Her roommate.
Yeah. And his grand travel plans. Amsterdam for a truffle experience, Madeira, Paris, New York. These fantastical escapes from reality, even as he's heading into what he calls the funny farm.
And we can't forget the sister, right? Hosting these elaborate birthday parties, initially saying no to the bounce house, but then caving anyway, demonstrating this platypus-like sixth sense about everything. The narrator mentioned she comes from a family of akathisians, which is a fascinating term for people who literally can't sit still.
Akathisia.
Exactly. It's this profound, almost involuntary restlessness that she clearly inherited. It's more than just fidgeting. It's this deep-seated need for constant motion, which is a perfect mirror for her own internal turmoil, isn't it? She also notes her family's fixation on death. She talks about the time her mother brought over her 5-page list of everything she still owns and asked her and her sister to initial what they wanted when she died.
Oh, my goodness.
These interactions, the endless texts, the pop-up visits from her father, who, after a few gin and tonics, isn't allowed in their house, the constant arguments, the unsolicited advice, it all adds up to her feeling that they have gone too far. It's like even if she could be still, her family wouldn't let her. They're constantly pulling her into their individual dramas, their collective chaos. It's a beautifully messy portrait of family, but also, a source of constant friction for her own quest for some kind of peace.
Right. So with all that pressure, internal and external, it almost feels inevitable she'd seek some kind of escape, even if it's just in her head, right?
Yeah.
This sort of imagined otherness. And that brings us to The Irishman. Yeah. Remember, she meets him at a bar, and there's this immediate, almost electric frisson, this magnetic energy in their mutual decision not to speak, a connection that feels immediately clandestine. It's like a flirtation with transgression, a performance almost. She imagines him watching them, her and the man buying her bourbon, while she holds her glass up and says, "As long as you don't mind that I'm married." It's this fantasy of rebellion, testing boundaries without any real consequence yet.
And what's truly fascinating there is how the narrative treats her memory of the affair. It's fragmented, which feels like more than just a stylistic choice. It feels like a psychological defense mechanism playing out right there on the page. She describes the events after 4:15 p.m. as muddled, right? But with extended flashes of clarity, crisp as daybreak, indisputably factual occurrences. Then she talks about spans of blackness that register as the gaps between transparencies on a cardboard disc inserted into a stereoscope. There even exists a plasticized clicking sound that accompanies the darkness, as when a Viewmaster's lever is engaged and the reel advances slowly forward.
The Viewmaster analogy, yeah.
Exactly. By framing her memories of the affair like that, Pittard subtly makes us question the reliability of memory itself, especially around experiences that challenge our self-image or our moral compass. It's a really profound way of showing the mind actively processing or maybe even repressing things that make us uncomfortable. What does that tell us, you think, about how we all tend to edit our own stories, especially when we confront things we've done that maybe we shouldn't have?
That's such a powerful point about memory and self-preservation. And the details she does remember are incredibly vivid, almost hyper-real. She remembers getting to this tall, plain brick residential building, ringing 4 after seeing his text, hearing that long, loud buzz to be let in, then a stairwell, vintage lights, a big, heavy door, the smell of cigarettes, a bartender in a green vest. She doesn't remember finding the Irishman, but she remembers being with him in this small booth at what he kept calling a speakeasy. The table was tiny, they were huddled close, his hand was on her knee, then her thigh, running fingers along the inner seam of her jeans. She recalls their hands under the table, her fingernails carving an arc in his palm, his shin tucked urgently behind her calf. And that really explicit exchange, "I just want to kiss you," she said. And his blunt reply, "I just want to fuck you."
Wow.
And then just blank. Waking up naked and alone in her own bed before sunrise, no memory of what happened next. But later, after cleaning the house top to bottom before Bruce gets home, she finds his sock under Bruce's side of the bed.
The sock.
Of the sock. It's like this single, undeniable, yet totally baffling piece of evidence, a physical anchor to a memory that's otherwise just gone. And this whole experience, or maybe just the desire for it, she says, it makes her feel alive again. Desired, important, powerful, feminine, dangerous.
Yeah, this deep desire to feel alive is such a central recurring thing for Hannah. It contrasts so sharply with the iterative tense, as she calls it, of her routine life, which she texts Jane about. She muses on the titillation and the exhaustion of affairs, almost intellectually dissecting them like they're an abstract concept. What's also really key here is her internal assertion that contentment might actually inhibit her writing.
Ah, the classic artist's dilemma.
Exactly. Does stability dull the creative edge? She seems to believe that this longing for otherness, even if it's not fulfilled or only partly realized, is essential fuel for her work, which is, a dangerous justification, tying personal chaos to professional necessity. But it's a justification a lot of artists can probably relate to, that whole idea that you have to suffer to create something meaningful.
And speaking of blurring lines and pushing boundaries, we have Mateo, her student. He's described as undeniably good-looking, clearly appealing to her on some level, and he constantly pushes the boundaries of their professional relationship. There's that really audacious email prank she talks about, playing on her ex-husband in Chicago like a decade ago when they were newlyweds. She created this fake persona, Jared, wrote this lengthy letter asking for the syllabus and workshop schedule, and then even escalated it, telling her ex his posture was a little cock-forward and that he might check that behavior in the future.
Oh my God.
Right. She openly admits she had an itch to be bad, feeling this balloon's worth of giddiness in her chest. She even imagined their dog running away and getting hit by a car just to stifle her laughter. This isn't just some random story. It reveals this long-standing pattern of playful, sometimes risky provocations, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It shows that this itch to be bad isn't something new. It's a deep-seated part of her personality. It's a way of testing limits, finding amusement, even if it's kind of at someone else's expense. And Mateo, in turn, seems to pick up on this. He engages in this direct flirtation that deliberately challenges her role as professor in the classroom. When he brings up her ex-husband's book, saying, the synopsis sounded ... familiar, it's obvious he reads the industry stuff, the trades. Their conversation then shifts to this off-campus coffee shop that's also a bar, and Mateo offers her beer instead of coffee. Then he pushes the boundaries even further, asking, "Mechanical bull, have you ever been on one?" And when she says yes and confidently says she'd be good at it, he reveals his blunt, suggestive intention. People who think they'd be good on a mechanical bull also think they're good at sex. Yeah. This, combined with the later classroom incident, creates this really fraught dynamic where the lines between student and professor, and maybe even between fantasy and reality, get incredibly blurry. She has this strong internal no to what she thinks he's implying, but her actions, even her thoughts, seem kind of drawn in by the transgression itself.
Yeah, the classroom incident where Mateo just brazenly reveals her book's topic. It's about her ex-husband.
Okay.
He had an affair with her best friend. That is such a cringe moment for anyone who's ever taught.
Oh, yeah.
The class goes, oohs and ahs, she sighs and tries to shut him down, right? Asserting that fiction is not a platform for revenge, and you can't use fiction as a means of making false accusations about living people. It's unethical.
Yeah.
But then there's this deeper kind of meta-commentary on storytelling itself, especially when they discuss Hemingway's A Very Short Story. Tiffany, another student, uses a particularly strong explicit word in class, and the narrator corrects her, not because the word itself is bad, but because it's the wrong word for the context for that specific historical moment in the story.
Precisely. It's about incongruity, like she explains. Tiffany saying they're fucking when discussing Hemingway's boy and girl love is wrong. Not because of the word, but because at that historical moment, the characters wouldn't have thought about their intimacy in such a modern, explicit way. It's a really sophisticated point about subtext, historical context, and the meaning embedded in language. And it's also a powerful projection on the narrator's part, isn't it? She suspects Tiffany and Mateo have been intimate recently, and Tiffany wants her to know. She even states, "My verdict is swift. They haven't fucked. He's not her type. But if they had fucked, which they haven't, she'd be wrong to think I care."
Right.
This whole discussion becomes this crucial lens for her to examine her own relationship to language, truth, and the stories people tell or don't tell about their lives, both her own and others. It's a brilliant way to explore how subjective truth really is in any narrative.
And if all that wasn't enough to deal with in her life, she also finds the talking cat.
Ah, the cat.
This injured tabby, found dramatically in the garage rafters, immediately establishes itself as this cynical, intelligent, and supremely demanding companion. Its demands are hilarious because they're so specific. Warm milk, fresh water, shrimp, human grade because day-old shrimp is inedible,
Yeah.
and a very precise blanket thingy. Its disdainful comments, stupid, useless human, idiot human, are like the perfect sarcastic counterpoint to her own, often critical inner voice. What is it about this animal, do you think, that lets her form such a deep, even if it's really unusual, connection?
The narrator forms this truly deep, almost troubling bond with this cat, and it's one of the most poignant relationships in the book, I think.
No.
It becomes a confidant, a mirror for her own cynical thoughts and a source of judgment. It purrs drama, drama, drama when she talks about her ex's book portraying her as smug, narcissistic, vaguely unhinged. And then in this moment of startling self-awareness, she agrees that's exactly how she is in real life. She reveals her deepest anxieties to it, including her puzzling inability to really mourn others' deaths, which she describes as feeling like math equations. While the cat's potential death turns my insides to jelly, she even wonders aloud, what is wrong with me? Why doesn't it make me sad to consider my death, his death, hers? This animal, this injured stray, becomes this profound emotional connection, maybe because it asks nothing of her in terms of normal human expectations or social roles. It just exists, judges her, and lets her project her deepest vulnerabilities without fearing human judgment. It's a really unique, almost symbiotic relationship.
The scene where Willow and Mateo rescue the cat is so bittersweet, though, isn't it? Willow, Mateo's new girlfriend, who has this anatomically correct heart tattoo, forms this immediate visceral bond with the cat. And the cat basically chooses her, just liquefying into her grasp. The narrator, despite having formed this deep, albeit one-sided bond, just lets them take it. Maybe recognizing it's truly best for the cat. Or maybe it's another step in her often self-sabotaging pattern of avoiding deep commitment or emotional ties.
Yeah.
She doesn't even get a chance to say goodbye privately.
Right.
The text she gets later from Crazy Tabby Mommy and the cat, via Mateo, asking, "Who is it, that man again?" are just the perfect touch of modern absurdity. It keeps the cat this haunting, judging presence even after it's physically gone. It's like her conscience, but, with fur and a bad attitude.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so moving on to confronting reality more directly. That grocery store incident, it's one of those tiny mundane moments that just blows up into a full-on existential crisis for her. You'll recall she just breaks off 2 celery stalks for a mirepoix, that classic aromatic base for soups and stews, super common.
Sure.
She thinks it's no big deal because it's sold by the pound, like bananas, which she does all the time and assumes everyone does. But an employee, some kid apparently spying on her, rats her out to his manager. The manager catches up with her in the sparkling water aisle. It escalates into this totally absurd back and forth about rubber bands and store policy, and it's just the perfect metaphor for her life feeling like it's unraveling.
It truly is. This seemingly tiny event triggers this huge aha moment for her. Oh my God, this is real. This is my real life. This is not what my life was supposed to be, was it? It's a moment of just stark disillusionment where the trivial rules of a grocery store suddenly become a microcosm for all the unfulfilled expectations of her entire life. It's that jarring realization that she's an adult, she's accountable for her actions, and her reality is just so far from the romanticized, maybe rule-breaking existence she might have imagined for herself. She hands the manager the celery, abandons her whole cart, and just walks all the way home. It's this literal and symbolic retreat from a reality she feels she can't control.
And Bruce's reaction just compounds it, right? It adds another layer of almost comedic tension. When she gets home and opens the front door, Bruce just looks at her for a long time. Then he goes to the side door, opens it, looks in their driveway, and asks, with that very practical logic of his, "Where's your car?"
Right.
She says, "At the grocery store." He asks, "Where are the groceries?" She replies, like with the weariness of a defeated soldier, "Same place." Then she starts crying. It shows his concern, obviously, but also this distinctly pragmatic focus that contrasts so sharply with her emotional meltdown. And the follow-up text a week later, "I'm serious about the bananas, FYI," is just... It's both hilarious in its deadpan delivery and subtly tense. It highlights those everyday tensions that can really chip away at even the most unconventional and understanding relationships. It's a perfect example of how the mundane can reveal these profound truths about a partnership.
It is, yeah, and that contrast is very telling. It highlights this core difference in how they face reality. He's grounded, almost infuriatingly practical, while she's spinning out into an existential crisis over celery. That almost feels like one of those classic misunderstandings that could really break a couple, Following this, she seeks solace at a writing residency up in New Hampshire, this isolated lodge. Her initial goal is focused writing, but she ends up just feeling sick of myself and depressed that I haven't written.
Right, the classic writer's block in a residency.
Exactly. The residency becomes less about external output and more about this internal, often uncomfortable journey of self-discovery, away from the familiar chaos of home, but straight into the chaos of her own mind. She even calls Bruce crying, telling him she wants to come home, but pointedly not telling him she's just sick of herself. She blames the environment instead. And this forced introspection at the residency leads to some incredibly revealing moments for her. The faulty bike incident, for example. It perfectly illustrates her disconnect from just basic practical realities. She admits she intentionally wrecked the bike because it didn't have handbrakes and she couldn't figure out how to slow down. Only realizing years later, watching Bruce teach his daughter, that she just needed to cycle backward on that kind of bike because no one had ever given me lessons or taught me how a bicycle worked.
Wow.
It's this really poignant reflection on her perceived lack of fundamental life lessons, maybe a kind of willful ignorance about how the world works, or maybe a history of just being shielded from its simpler mechanics. And then there's her playful request for the husband pillow. She sees this portable, soft-sided desk thing at the library and asks the librarian if she can check out that husband.
The librarian is totally flummoxed, calls it a laptop pillow. Later, the narrator Googles husband plus pillow and finds images of those giant sofa cushions with arms. It's just her quirky, almost childlike way of seeing relationships and her ongoing desire for comfort and support filtered through her own unique perspective.
And this internal journey keeps going with the unexpected discovery of her old novel, this partial manuscript from years before, found in a manila envelope while cleaning up at the residency. In it, the narrator character desires to be a young widow and actually fantasizes about murdering her husband. She even saves him at the last minute, only because the stepdaughter's wide-eyed expression is too much.
Whoa, that's dark.
It's a profoundly unsettling detail, right? It reveals these dark, maybe unacknowledged desires from her past, a shocking glimpse into a younger, more dangerous, maybe even violent version of herself. It forces her, and us as readers, to confront the subconscious depths of her psyche and think about how these earlier thoughts might connect to her current otherness cravings. What does it tell us about the psychological weight of confronting a past, darker self? And the potential for these buried desires to resurface. This isn't just about fictional stories. It's about the stories we tell ourselves about who we've been and how those past selves haunt or shape who we are now. But the real aha moment at the residency seems to come during a conversation about a friend's crush. The narrator suddenly realizes that angst, because living between two worlds and being pulled by 2 or 3 or 4 appetites, is the very stuff of life. It's like an embrace of complexity, of contradiction as the essence of existence, and a realization that her father's constant motion is also the very stuff of life.
It's like she finally finds a framework, maybe a kind of acceptance, for her own pervasive restlessness and inner chaos. The residency itself is filled with these delightfully quirky characters, too. There are Croatian poets, Belgian filmmakers, Polish painters, and this bubbly woman who gives out cedar oil and apparently has a pet porcupine named Darling.
A porcupine, okay.
Right. And there's this dark humor running through it about the place being a murder lodge and her almost obsessive fear of axe murderers, serial killers, psychopaths, which feels like just another layer of her internal anxieties projected outward onto her isolated surroundings. She even admits to checking the bolt on her bedroom door every hour on the hour at night.
Wow.
But the absolute peak of confronting reality, not just internal but external, comes when she gets called into the dean's office.
This is really where public scrutiny hits hard and becomes incredibly personal, yeah. She's meeting with the dean, and legal because of stewing complaints. The dean tells her she looks a little green, which is the same thing her mother tells her, a small, telling detail about her vulnerability in that moment. The core complaints are almost absurd in context, yet they carry these heavy implications for her career and reputation. There's Tiffany's protest about the use of that strong, explicit word in class, and then the accusation that the narrator doesn't admire all students equally, specifically that at least 3 female students feel as though they receive less respect from her. It's a direct challenge to her authority and her professionalism, especially when the dean pointedly asks, "Did you tell the only black girl in your class that she couldn't use the word fucking while you were teaching a story that was literally about fucking?" It forces her to confront not just these individual complaints, but the broader implications of identity, power dynamics, and perception within the whole academic environment.
The climax of that meeting, though, is just pure comedic genius, even though it must have been terrifying for her. The dean asks if she writes student names on her palm. She reflexively clenches her left hand into a fist, hiding the ink. The lawyer, legal, consults her notes, and the narrator's eyes fixate on "Don't forget about cat," written at the top in all caps.
No.
She's screaming internally, "Just ask me about the cat already." She nearly shouts, "Get it over with already. Ask me. Just ask me." The tension builds to this almost unbearable point. And then legal, almost shyly, reveals it's her reminder to buy cat food, admitting we've been feeding her locks, but...
Oh my God.
The entire loaded situation just deflates instantly in this burst of unexpected absurdity. But despite the comedic relief, it powerfully highlights the profound invasion of privacy and the immense pressure on educators these days.
It really does. It's such a stark moment of vulnerability as the narrator realizes, I know how I'm talked about. This constant external gaze, the misinterpretations, the absurd accusations, they all chip away at her sense of self and authenticity. It forces her to confront how she is perceived versus who she believes herself to be, and the huge gap that can exist between those two realities. It's a moment that forces her to consider, what, if anything, she needs to apologize for, or if this is simply the cost of being herself in a world that seems determined to judge.
Okay, so shifting from that public scrutiny back to the deeply personal history, we get into her family legacies, especially her father's journey, which is both, heartbreaking and darkly humorous. He's involuntarily committed to what he dismissively calls a rehabilitation facility or even his funny farm in Massachusetts. And his immediate rejection of the place, "They're frauds, criminals, my feet were cold, I didn't sleep the entire time I was here," it's so perfectly him.
Classic deflection, yeah.
Right. He admits he just wanted someone to talk to, but no one would talk to me. His erratic behavior and these philosophical shifts are almost operatic. It's a real spectacle of a man trying to find meaning in his own unique way.
His ketamine experiences at the facility apparently lead to an oceanic view and new perspectives, as he explains to her over text, almost with this newfound spiritual enlightenment. And he has these grand, almost delusional travel plans. Amsterdam for a truffle experience, Madeira, this marlin fishing place, it's always 70 degrees, Paris, where he'll stay in a $200 a night place with a balcony, and New York, where he plans to visit a bookstore specializing in French near a park to buy The Little Prince in both French and English. These aren't just travel plans, right? They're this constant pursuit of aliveness through grand experiences and perpetual motion. It's kind of a mirror to Hannah's own restlessness, though his is much more externalized, more dramatic. He's also newly active on Spotify, excited about learning something new, getting 20 more songs with a new friend named Gus. He believes he's a philanthropist now, despite his earlier bankruptcy and his current situation. It's this incredible mix of grandiosity, self-delusion, and this genuine, almost childlike searching for meaning that makes him such a compelling, if totally exasperating figure. He's a man desperately trying to define himself as he faces aging and isolation.
The detail about his apartment, though, is really moving, such a stark contrast to his erratic behavior. In the entryway, there are a dozen thriving plants, all different sizes and shapes. A painted lady, a monstera, a jade plant, a spider plant, all thriving because, he says, I wanted there to be life around me. I can get lonely, I like to see something pretty on my way in and on my way out. And his large gilt mirror, which she recognizes from her childhood horse farm, is now completely covered in sticky notes. Yellow, pink, green, big, small, all in his distinctive sprawling handwriting. They are aphorisms, notes of encouragement, desperate affirmations. What you are enduring is exactly what you need and what is supposed to happen. You have a lot to live for. Buy a magnolia. You have a choice. Optimist. This moment is not so bad. Being alive means being present. And a giant green smiley face with, you will make it through this. And lots of folks need you.
Oh, wow.
It's this desperate yet incredibly endearing attempt at self-affirmation, a really vulnerable display of his internal struggle, almost a cry for connection.
The complexity of their relationship is undeniable, yeah. And his influence clearly casts these long shadows into her present. His pathological entitlement and careless shortcuts like leaving the luggage door open mid-flight back in his pilot days, or not verifying fuel quantity, or letting his kids play that loaded gun game, they contrast so sharply with his deep-seated loneliness and his need for connection. He confesses, I just wanted someone to talk to, and complains that no one would talk to me at the facility. His pilot's carry-on, this military-grade expensive bag, it symbolizes his desire for order and control amidst all the chaos. And his wish to be awake the day I die reflects this profound longing for presence and meaning, even right up to the end. And as you mentioned, Hannah's own childhood was heavily shaped by these really formative, often dangerous experiences.
Indeed. These are deeply unsettling childhood memories she shares, and they connect so powerfully to her adult self. Remember the hot tub and her brother's urine prank?
Ugh.
She was maybe 4 or 5. Her brother asks if she wants lemonade. He comes back with this red plastic cup. It's warm and steaming. She knew something was wrong from the giggling and the way all the other kids were staring. But she drank it anyway. It triggers this muscle memory of quiet weeping. It's a moment of early betrayal and conformity, right? She drank it because her brother was there, her sister was there, everyone expected it for the punchline. This isn't just some funny, gross story. It feels like a foundational experience of being manipulated and coerced, of ignoring her own gut feeling for the sake of the group, a pattern that kind of echoes in her adult relationships.
These early experiences are clearly formative, yeah. Connecting directly to her later struggles with control and trust and just her general guardedness, we hear about the game of chicken on ATVs with her brother and sister running headlong into each other, both breaking an arm. Her sister shouting and laughing, "I'm no chicken, I'm no chicken." And then that chilling loaded gun game with her sister after the Orkin man came. Roaming from floor to floor, room to room, taking turns with a loaded revolver, pretending to search for a burglar. These are not just moments of profound neglect and incredibly dangerous play. They're instances where the boundaries of safety and trust were just completely obliterated. But the day everything truly changed, which she calls the day the adventures ended, was when the barn manager's daughter told her her parents were getting divorced. It signaled the end of the shopping sprees, the summers on Sea Island, the ponies for show and tell. This seemingly external event became the trigger for a profound internal shift, marking the end of childhood innocence and any perceived stability.
For me, the most traumatic moments, the ones that really hit hard, are when her mother drags her into the woods to hide from her father and the sheriff, weeping, pressed into the dirt for over an hour, not knowing why they were hiding. The sheer terror and confusion of a child in that moment, forced into this clandestine act by the person who should be protecting her, it's just palpable. And then her mother cornering her in the laundry room when she was in 6th grade, ironing her uniform, asking in this casual yet totally loaded tone, "Has your father ever touched you?" in a way that made you feel uncomfortable.
Oh, wow.
She was mute, just shook her head. But her mother added, "The lawyer said I had to ask." This is the moment, she says, she started feeling differently about my father the day I started feeling ashamed. It's a moment of profound psychological rupture that instilled this deep-seated fear and a distance between her and men. It led to her having a late first kiss at 17 and not another until she was 20. It explains so much of her guardedness, her difficulty with trust, and her almost intellectualized approach to intimacy as an adult. It feels like a key to understanding her whole emotional landscape.
It absolutely creates this foundation of distrust that clearly persists in her relationships. Her saying she put distance between us, guarding herself against him and every other man, reveals the lasting impact of these early wounds, shaping how she perceives all male figures. Yet, amidst all these complex and often traumatic family dynamics, there's the evolving and actually surprisingly sweet relationship with Bruce's daughter.
That relationship really is sweet in its own way, and it evolves beautifully through the book. You remember, it starts with the daughter's stark declaration to the UPS man, with the narrator standing right behind her, "That's not my mother," and the narrator's equally firm reply, "And that's not my daughter."
Right, a standoff.
Exactly. But it evolves slowly, organically, to the daughter suddenly saying, "You're basically my mom," which initially fills the narrator with fear in my heart and a knife in my hand, because she doesn't want that role. She replies, "No, you have a mother, and it's not me." It's this push and pull, a resistance to a conventional label that she clearly feels constrained by, even as the actual bond between them deepens.
And what's truly fascinating are their conversations, especially about the big existential questions. They reveal the daughter's sort of innocent clarity and the narrator's cynical wisdom. The daughter asks about God, religion, the meaning of life, and arrives at these really pragmatic conclusions like, if people need to believe in a God as a way to be nice to other people, then I think that's okay, even though, I don't believe. The narrator, childless by choice and overtly cynical about traditional beliefs, finds herself drawn into this quasi-parental role almost against her will, imparting her own jaded perspectives. It's a beautiful illustration of how relationships can form beyond the traditional labels, driven by shared curiosity and a surprising level of acceptance.
And then the narrator, completely unprompted, gives this unexpected lesson to the 11-year-old on topics ranging from blue laws and the importance and danger of rhetoric to abortion, women's rights, 1972, Title IX, gender equality, honor killings and Malal Yousafzai.
Wow, quite the curriculum.
Right. It's this flood of cynical wisdom being imparted to this innocent, impressionable mind. Even as the narrator marvels at the daughter's capacious belief not just in the truth of a world, but in the truth of me. She tells the daughter she only cares about religion if they get in the way of my freedom. It highlights the narrator's own need for someone to believe in her, even as she's trying to tear down the world's illusions for this young girl. It's a really complex dance of cynicism and surprising tenderness.
It's a really complex dynamic, yeah, where the narrator both resists and embraces the caregiving role, projecting her own worldview while also maybe finding a mirror for her own yearning for truth and meaning in the daughter's clear-eyed questions. And her coping mechanism often turns to this morbid humor and these hypothetical destinies, which feels like her way of asserting control in a chaotic world. It demonstrates her own fixation on death and this desire to control the narrative, even in the afterlife.
Yes, she engages in these darkly humorous hypotheticals, imagining the most bizarre and dramatic scenarios. She imagines Bruce falling on the stairs, pulling her with him, and they die. Tangled in each other's broken limbs, his lungs collapsed, my neck snapped. Then their joint funeral, which she'd hate and Bruce would love, with her mother speaking first, then her father. The publicity of their mutual sadness softens them toward each other, and they end up remarrying before the month is out, dividing their time between their two houses, just like their children did nearly 4 decades earlier.
Oh my goodness, the cycle continues.
It's an almost cyclical vision of family patterns and her very distinct, dark sense of humor, a way of processing the ultimate unknown, maybe.
And then the truly wild, almost cinematic scenario. The family plane crash, specified in her will, including her mother, father, sister, brother, and even her dog, Elmer.
Elmer the dog, right?
They charter a Cessna to Abaco, where her father always threatened he'd walk one day into the woods with a shotgun if he got too old and life ceased to be worth living. The plane disintegrates on impact, killing everyone. And the most absurd yet specific detail, a marlin, not known for their taste for human flesh, eats her mother's arm. And the Rolex, a gift from her father, still ticking after a fisherman guts the marlin, becomes part of an ad campaign sanctioned by Bruce's daughter.
Wow, that's elaborate.
Right. Bruce's daughter then splits the proceeds with her nephews, but keeps the watch for herself because the narrator coveted it. This elaborate fantasy is her way of processing trauma, asserting agency over death, and subtly critiquing family dynamics and legacies, even in their hypothetical end. It's this dark, humorous dance with mortality and legacy, a way of writing her own ending, completely on her own terms. She even explicitly dictates in her will that she be cremated with Elmer's cremains, but not Bruce's. A final, defiant act of keeping it weird.
Okay, so all these layers, family history, past traumas, present relationship, her internal landscape, it all leads her back to that core, relentless desire for aliveness. And the Irishman's texts, they continue to arrive, like these phantom limbs of a past transgression, 7 years after I was dismissed, arriving now as I am, 7 years older, less elastic, 7 years closer to female invisibility. It's such a striking image of time's relentless, almost cruel march and how it impacts her sense of self and, well, desirability.
These texts, despite all the time that's passed and the ambiguity of the original encounter, they still wield this immense power over her. They erase that lingering uncertainty, making me feel alive again, desired, important, powerful, feminine. They make me feel dangerous, and I want to feel dangerous for as long as I can.
Yeah, it's that intellectual desire again, right? That craving for the titillation she mused on earlier. It feels like a last grasp, but a feeling of potency that she fears is fading with age. She's clinging to this feeling, even if it's based on a fragmented memory and an illusion of otherness. It's like a final attempt to reclaim a sense of agency and vibrancy. But then the blunt, explicit text arrives. Let me come in your mouth.
Oof.
And her reaction is just visceral, utterly repulsed. Eat the phone. Eat it now. It's a moment of profound, undeniable truth, revealing this gaping chasm between her intellectual desire for the dangerous thrill and her genuine, what she calls her childish, prudish truth. That This isn't sexy. This doesn't turn me on. It repulses me. She has this immediate, almost violent self-realization that she's a fake water from a tree masquerading as rain after a storm. She acknowledges she's as closed off, sealed up, buttoned down as any old housewife, a monogamous person at heart, against every intellectual and theoretical desire. It's a powerful, almost brutal moment of self-recognition, that all the fantasies were just that, fantasies. And her true self is far more conventional than maybe she wanted to admit.
It's a truly fascinating pivot, yeah. It demonstrates the profound difference between a conceptual desire for transgression and the raw, explicit reality of an actual invitation. It's the moment the intellectual facade just crumbles. And yet, almost immediately after this jarring self-realization, and right in the melee of the cat being taken by Willow and Mateo, she makes this impulsive decision. She responds to the Irishman's text with doubly where and when, which she recognizes as the shorthand of adultery.
Right after the cat leaves. Wow.
Exactly. This is such a deeply contradictory act, a moment of impulsive rebellion after losing her strange judging companion, almost as if the loss of one unconventional connection triggers this desperate attempt to create another one.
This choice, she says, is for the reason of life, of electricity pulsing again through my veins, of being pulled down the road by something new, by the world itself. It's an act against monotony, a final desperate attempt to reignite that sense of dangerous aliveness she thought she craved, regardless of her earlier repulsion. She sends the text, then immediately powers down her phone, plugs it in away from her bedroom, unable to sleep. Her mind is described as a battle zone. She can only imagine responses that might fail to satisfy her too late, or change my mind, or control yourself. Ha-ha. She waits, eyes wide open, adjusted to the dark, listening to her eyeballs in their sockets, hearing this quiet, crackling sound as they shift focus. It's almost a physical manifestation of her internal turmoil, her anxiety made manifest. She feels like a vibrating live wire of nerves and anxiety.
And the symbolic run that follows, after she just can't bear the anticipation or the sound of her own eyeballs anymore, is incredibly vivid. It serves as such a powerful metaphor for her entire journey. It's after midnight, and she runs so fast, so easily, passing her usual 4-mile checkpoint and not feeling the least bit winded. She thinks, my God, my God, my God, just reveling in this feeling of effortless power and freedom. In her mind, she replays every interaction with the Irishman she can remember, all his texts, new and old. She makes up the memories she was too drunk to remember, imagining his tongue, his teeth, his hands everywhere. She fantasizes, we could feel alive together. We could find a detour from everyday monotony. We could find purpose, lust, desire, remind our bodies what it feels like to be turned on.
Yeah.
But this powerful, almost ecstatic fantasy is just abruptly shattered by a stark return to reality. She falls hard. Her knee lands and slides on something jagged before her palms catch her. Her right kneecap is frayed, blood pools and pushes through her leggings. Her palms burn, her heels are shredded and filled with tiny stones. It's this brutal, physical manifestation of her brokenness, a literal and symbolic fallback to earth. A stark contrast to the effortless fantasy, reminding her that reality has consequences, and that maybe true aliveness isn't found in escape, but in the painful confrontation with yourself.
So what is Hannah Pittard's really unflinching honesty about all her inner turmoil and contradictions? What does that tell us about our own lives, do you think? Is the pursuit of aliveness always going to be at odds with the stability and comfort of contentment? Or is there maybe a way to find vibrancy within the very mundane moments we often try to escape?
That's the question, isn't it? It really prompts us to consider the stories we tell ourselves versus the realities we actually live, and how we navigate that complex, often really messy space between who we are, who we pretend to be, and maybe who we desperately wish we could become. Perhaps true aliveness isn't found in those grand detours or forbidden texts, but in the terrifying truth of confronting the mundane and finding some kind of fragile peace within our own complex contradictions. What a journey we've taken today, really peeling back the layers of a truly complex mind within Hannah Pittard's If You Love It, Let It Kill You. It's such a testament to the fact that even in the most everyday moments, these seemingly trivial details, there are profound truths about human desire, about fear, and about that constant, often contradictory search for meaning.
Absolutely. We really hope you found some moments of connection, or maybe a few aha moments of your own as we explored Hannah's story today. Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration of her experiences. If you enjoyed this discussion, please make sure to like, comment, and share this episode with a friend. Your support really helps us keep these conversations going.
And don't forget to subscribe to Cliffhangers and Page Turners wherever you get your podcasts. For all our past episodes, remember to head over to our YouTube channel for the full library.
Join us next week for episode 25, when we'll be discussing Nowhere Man by Deborah Stone. You definitely won't want to miss that one. Until then, keep those pages turning and keep your minds curious.